Hi guys, my name's Connor. I'm a science fiction, political, and philosophy nerd, a Marine Corps and law enforcement veteran, and a never Trump Republican. Today we're going to be breaking down a couple of things, but the first thing that I got for you is Sitch and Adam. Centrist, independent, liberals who no longer like the left because the left has gone too far, blah, 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 versus FD Signifier, who is a black gentleman on YouTube who does talk about progressive issues, leftism, Black Lives Matter, all that kind of stuff. And they had a conversation / debate that I wanted to review because, frankly, between Sitch and Adam, you think we would be natural allies, but I think it's the narcissism of small differences, where if you align a lot politically, but then somebody does something very stupid, you kind of freak out on them because you think that you should be more aligned. That's what I did to Adam. But Adam's also an asshole. So, you know, it kind of is what it is. So we're going to watch it. Hopefully we find some things to make fun of and criticize and expand into cool ideas. So let's go ahead and bring Mr. Sitch and Adam onto the show.
Now it's your boy PSA Sitch here with another Sunday stream with everyone's favorite Adam friended.
What's up, everybody? How you doing, Sitch?
I'm doing great.
Nice. So am I. High energy, full of energy. I don't feel like I need a nap or anything.
Yes. Today we're going to be covering a couple of subject matter, or maybe more than a couple. We're going to be first watching this FD Signifier video that you found. That you showed this video to me. You said, Sitch, I think I love this video. I love FD Signifier. I'm changing my entire worldview or my entire opinion of him based on this video. That's what you told me.
Did I say that?
You did.
I mean, I thought I told you he was like an arrogant piece of shit who thought he was morally superior than all of us. That's the way I recall the conversation going.
Maybe I kind of added some things that he didn't really say.
I always wonder about people who spend 90% of their time mind reading other people, right? They're pros on you.
That's the fun stuff. Okay. You whip out the crystal ball and you go, ooh.
Look, I like people who tell me about themselves, right? I don't like people that are kind of going to come at me and tell me about other people. It's like, let me explore that.
I'm trying to balance it. Because I actually viciously dislike Adam because we had a beef leading up to the Trump election, and I'll tell you why. And so I'm trying to balance my innate distaste for this man along with what's actually fair. So I'm going to try to be fair, but I just kind of want to warn you that I might not be fair. I might pick on this guy extra hard because I got beef, basically. So Adam is sarcastically talking about how, oh, isn't it he's being sarcastic, by the way, if you couldn't tell. He's saying, oh, isn't it so unreasonable for people to tell you about the mindsets of other people versus when they just tell you what they think? And the reason why we have beef is because probably 2 years, maybe a year and a half before the election, he was like, oh, yeah, I would never vote for Trump. You know, the January 6th thing is so crazy. And the Democrats, you know, they'd have to run a really bad candidate for me even to abstain from voting, right? That was kind of his position about a year and a half out. But a year to 6 months before the election, he was making all these noises about how, like, well, you know, actually, Biden, we don't really know what he's doing because he obviously has dementia. And so what if he launches nukes into the Middle East and North Africa randomly? And what if he just decides to like put AIDS in the water supply because he has dementia? You know, what if that happens? He's a black box. We can't really understand what's going on in there. And so everyone with an IQ over 90 was like, oh, okay. So you're sweeping, like what you're doing is you're sweeping for Trump by making all these excuses about how the Democrats are just as bad or potentially worse than Trump. That way your audience doesn't feel guilty about voting for Trump. And he's like, no, I'm not doing that. That's not what I'm saying. You need to listen to what I'm saying. But then he would go back to doing the same thing over and over again. And so Pisco called him out. I asked him to explain his perspective. He actually got ass mad, like when I asked him to explain his perspective. And then we had this big fight, like, I don't know, 6 months out to election. And his whole thing with like reading people's minds was he accused me because I was working with Democrats in order to fight against the Trump agenda. You know, he was like, oh, you're just doing that for the money. You're just doing that for the bag. You're a paid shill, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, fuck you. I've been Never Trump since 2015. People asked me if I wanted to work together in order to try to have some kind of impact against Trump. And I said yes. I've been open and transparent about this the entire time. And I doubt you can point to a single position that I've actually changed on in reference to Trump. You're just pointing to this as like, I hate to use the word bad faith, but you're pointing to this as like a very unconvincing reason why you shouldn't listen to the points that I'm making. And he just never moved past that. And he effectively attacked my character. He said that the only reason why I'm doing what I'm doing is for the bag. And it's like, fuck you, right? Fuck you is what I have to say to that. So if you can look at the past 6 months of Trump, you know, obviously it's not fully 6 months, but if you can look at the past 6 months of Trump and be like, Kamala would do the same thing. Kamala would do the same thing for Israel. Kamala would do the same thing for Ukraine. Kamala would do the same thing with Alligator Alcatraz. Kamala would do the same thing with mass deportations. Kamala would do the same thing with, you know, shout out to Bravo's here. So we disagree on mass deportations. But the point is, if you think Kamala would have been the same, you're a fucking idiot.
At myself, right? Let me see if I
the same or worse, I should specify.
How I think about those other people.
Yes.
I don't need a go between. So
then we're going to talk about there's a Supreme Court, there's a couple Supreme Court rulings, but there was one that like, oh my God, everyone's talking about, totally exploded. It was about the birthright citizenship. Trump trying to override birthright citizenship and nationwide injunctions. And I did kind of a deep dive into that. We'll be talking about that.
That should be a lot of fun. I can't wait.
Oh, look at this guy. Look at this guy.
No, if they
doesn't want to know information, doesn't want to know the truth.
No, I'm serious. I am interested. I'm totally interested. The whole reimagining of the birthright citizenship thing, I think, is triggering a lot of people. If we could get rid of birth tourism, the people who come over from China just have a kid. These women that get off the plane, they're like 8 months pregnant. They're just there for a few days to nab an American citizenship and then race back to their home country with their kid. If we could get rid of that, I guess about 33,000 people a year do that. There are entire industries around it, right? They book your travel and do all that stuff just so.
Okay. So I'm split on the birthright citizenship thing. On one hand, I think that people who are citizens of this country should actually care about this country. I would use Hassan Piker as the perfect example of where I feel like almost effectively like an enemy to the United States. You know, Mehmet Piker, a Turkish, Middle Eastern, North African supremacist who dislikes the United States, had, you know, his son in America for the political and social ties. His son became a cringe communist, and now he's effectively an instigator against the American government, who is a citizen and therefore has all these rights and protections that allow him to say crazy shit all the time without punishment or sanction. And so on a certain degree, I'm like, well, fuck that. You know, you're not. Hassan Piker is not, you know, what's the allegiance, the Pledge of Allegiance? It's like, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Hassan Piker not only doesn't believe that, he's actively hostile to 70% of the concepts within that framework. And so while he's a citizen in the way in which he was granted citizenship and has all these rights and protections, he is actually not like somebody who believes in the American project. And so I almost view that as like subversive bullshit that pisses me off. Now, that being said, I do think it speaks to the power of the United States of America that even our enemies travel to our country in order to give birth to American citizens so they can take advantage of the privileges and power that comes with citizenship. So it's kind of like something that's like, it's so cool and it speaks to the power of the United States so much does it ultimately matter that some cringe fucking rival enemy dickheads of the United States have their kids here for some financial, social, political advantage? And I don't really have a good answer to that.
Your kid can get American citizenship.
Don't you?
But if I could catapult Hassan Piker into the fucking sun, I would. I would throw that lever so fast.
You want those kids though? That's smart. That's the kind of go-getter
Ooh, let's see what Sitch has to say.
attitude you want.
They go back to their home country. First of all,
a lot of them don't. A lot of them come back to the United States for college, and then they either go back to their home country, Western educated, and then make their societies better, or they stay in the United States and they become productive citizens for the United States.
well, if we could get rid of Hassan, because that's basically what
True based. Damn it. We agree.
Hassan's parents did, right? Hassan's parents showed up for a couple months, had Hassan, took him back and raised him in Turkey. And then once he was 18, foisted him on the rest of us. So do you really think that that's a good thing? Do
Okay,
you
you've changed
that?
my mind with
With
one
one
example.
individual.
With
Yes,
one example,
exactly.
yes, you've changed my mind. I'm against birthright.
Well, it seems like a big fucking scam. Is it not a scam? That's a scam.
Right.
Hit 1 foot on American soil, and all of a sudden
I agree with Adam.
you're an American citizen, born to
Bam.
completely foreign national parents. So
There you go.
that's a one case, though, that I think the idea that they're not under the jurisdiction of America seems to apply, right?
No, it doesn't. That's not true.
Oh, really? Okay. I guess we're going to talk about that.
We're going to
later
talk
then.
about that. Yes.
Yeah.
I read the not just some of the opinion that came out, but which wasn't really about that. It was about the national injunction. But I read the opinion that from like the 1800s that was originally where birthright citizenship, the interpretation of it has come from and has never changed since.
Ooh.
Okay, cool.
So
Which
we'll
is why
talk
I
about
like
that.
Sitch.
That's the case, right? I know
Yes.
about that.
Yes,
I'm well versed in
arc.
a lot of things about the world.
Yes.
I know all these things. I'm
and
a
then-
genius.
And then you are. Listen, your brain.
That's
very big.
laughable, but
Okay.
I just thought I would say it because it sounded funny.
And then
Oh, I missed this. I missed the Sitch and Adam friendship tour. All right, I'm gonna read a few chats just to break up the stream a little bit because they're obviously warming up. Christian Blair says the rookie is all right, but it's really effing unrealistic in reference to guns, cops, and procedures. I agree. I actually thought that fire content would be the way that I do my reacts and breakdowns for. I want to do so much content, but we're going to get the Star Wars, sci-fi, and 40K channels running for reacts and breakdowns. But I was thinking I should do Counterpoints Combat, which would be effectively Valor reacts, where I react to like war movies and war scenes and combat footage and all that kind of stuff and break it down. And then I was thinking about like Counterpoints Crime, where effectively I do like police show breakdowns. And I think the rookie would be endless fodder for criticism of how they simultaneously make law enforcement so fucking goofy, and then they get some things correct and they get other things totally bananas wrong. But that's okay. It's effectively like a drama with law enforcement as a background that has a lot of gunplay. And I swear to God, if a cop went through as much gunplay as an episode of The Rookie did, they would just like crack from PTSD. But anyways, Sacred Snow says, like, obviously all of Mango's actions are the result of his decision of them cheering on alcoholic reaching a BAC that has a 50-50 chance of death. Yeah, exactly. Yes. All right. Then Wowman542 says, who will give Connor psychic damage first, FD Signifier or Adam? My money is on Adam. Well, yeah, he already did, so good. Sin Patty says, FD exudes psychic damage, but man, Adam is another level of cringe. Well, we're going to see how it goes. Yeah. No. So AKA says, Adam's going to annoy you by trying to be funny. I'm betting. Listen, I'm into boomer humor. Okay, I'm a boomer myself in many regards. And so being cringe in order to elicit a laugh and it half working and not working, I find that endearing. So that's actually, I'm going to try to be fair. I'm going to try to be as fair as I can. Sager Snow says, also try to repress the one guy if LB shows up. I'll try. No promises. No promises. All right, let's continue.
Then we'll be also talking about the Ethan Klein lawsuit.
Oh my God, it's so good, Sitch.
It's so
like,
funny.
It's levels of epic. He's like, oh, I gotta include the diversity and inclusion here. I need to add a black guy to the lawsuit.
Yes, so we'll be talking about that, and also we can watch. I found a funny video of Hassan maulding and raging out about the whole lawsuit situation.
Right. Does he mention Osmongold? I mean, I don't see it.
He obviously mentions Osmongold. Okay. Every video he has to mention Osmongold. It's like it's in the contract.
Yeah, what's going on with that? He's just super bitter, right? Super chapped.
He's
been dethroned.
Hierarchy. He got dethroned and he can never let it go.
Is he gonna wait till he's in third place? Oh my God, suicide watch.
It was funny. There was like a time period where he would not like every.
All right, I'm going to fast forward a little bit because I want the content. Even if they're not talking to FD, I want them to break down his shit. Here we go. 00. Okay, so let's see if they do a little bit of an intro first, and then it looks like in the next 30 seconds they're going to start the content.
Makers.
Wow.
Yeah, and then he
puts
some schlop background track on his video. I mean, I do think this is on his B-side channel, so so it's just B-side slop.
Okay, well, let's jump into this.
Video is going to be a bit long for a light work, so for the sake of those who might not finish, I want to give one really important takeaway up front. Stop arguing with certain folks on social media. If you see people posting things like Black people stay home or anything that remotely sounds like FBA or ADOS type rhetoric, block and ignore. Black conservative Negro babble, block and ignore. We have more control over social media.
Oh my God, 30 seconds in. We got to hear that again. Oh, wait, it's right there. Black conservative Negro babble.
You like that framing? That's a good phrase. I like that phrase.
Yeah, that's crazy to me. I'm probably thinking it's crazy for similar reasons to Sitch and Adam. If I said the N-word hard R in any context, I'm pretty sure people they might not care because, let's face it, we're not that big of a creator, but they might not care, but that would be used as endless ammunition against me forever, is just using the hard R in public. And then also just Black conservative, I could probably say that, I'm not going to, N-word babble, but it's, Spanish for black. On crayons, it says black, and then it says a different word underneath describing black for conservatives. I feel like there's this like outright dismissal of social conservative Black folk who might have gotten into the middle class or the upper middle class. And so they adopt some fiscal conservative perspectives. And so they start being sympathetic to non-racist Republican policy. And so they get outright dismissed by the Black community and effectively told that they're traitors. And I think that's racist as shit. Like ideology, I understand that the United States has failed in a lot of ways in order to get everybody up and running in a way that's like equal enough that we can all feel like we're citizens in the American project. I understand that we failed in a lot of regards, but effectively saying that like your political ideology has to be determined by your racial category or else you're a traitor. That's some of the most racist shit I've ever heard in my life. Ensort says, Steiner Scout Lance from Battletech checking in. We scouted a unit identified as Ultramarines. They're gone now. Thank you for the $5 donation, King. And what I would say is, in my science fiction channel, Battletech, Mech Warriors, and Titans are going to be precursors to the Knights and Titans of the 40K universe. And I will be breaking down that content. Same thing with Gundams.
If you're a Black conservative, everything that you're saying is babble.
It's no. It's a Negro babble. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Oh, he said it.
Yeah.
How is that? That is the racist.
Shadow 2 Bravo, you frustrate me because, all right, sorry, we got to get one guy by Shadow 2 Bravo real quick. He says, I mean, the Democrats are worse than Trump. I think the Democrats are bad in that they make excuses for like unlimited abortion. The crazy ones do anyways. They have very dumb perspectives on gun control. Some of the social programs that they designate have perverse incentives built into them. So they make people dependent on social programs instead of trying to create independent people. Some of the cities that they have taken over effectively have been so filled with perverse incentives that they've degraded despite decades of social programs trying to get people out of poverty. And so there's plenty of things that I have issues with the Democrats on. However, in reference to geopoll, in reference to things outside of the United States, which I know you don't care about as much as I do, Trump has been an unmitigated fucking disaster. Backstabbing Ukraine in such a way that thousands of Ukrainians are dying, and now we're not supplying them weapons and munitions to the point that their lines are faltering is a fucking disaster waiting to happen. Cutting the mosquito prevention in Africa and the AIDS prevention in Africa to the point that it's estimated that the USAID cuts are currently projected to kill 14. I said 3, right? And 3 million people were like, Connor, you're being an alarmist. The current Lancet study projections for the amount of people who are going to die of disease within the next 5 years is 14 million. And I want you to think about that, okay? If Lancet says 14 million, another study says 3 million, let's go ahead and go on the low side and say it's 500,000. If I lined up 500,000 human beings, and they could be the race that you hate the most, they could be Puerto Ricans or Aboriginal Australians or people who, you know, black folk who specifically bring Bluetooth speakers to movie theaters. They could be the worst human beings on the world. But if I lined up whatever racist stereotype you have in your brain, imagine the people that you hate the most. And if I took 500,000 people and I lined them up and I shot them in the back of the head individually, one after the other, eventually you would freak the fuck out and you would stop me. And you would say, you're an inhuman monster. What the fuck is wrong with you? But because it's overseas and because it's people that you don't have to look at and because it's from things that are kind of ephemeral, like mosquito prevention or HIV, you can look at the number 3 million and it's not real to you. You can look at 14 million and it's not real to you. But if this was happening as a result of violence, and it was videotaped, it would be real to you. And so that's what kind of pisses me off. Like, Shadow 2 Bravo, I'm going to love you till the end of days. I will love you parasocially, like a brother, for being a special forces guy who served the United States military during the War on Terror, who was a young person who came up during the War on Terror, and who is now, a working class, middle class schlub who's trying to take care of your family. You will forever have my respect in that regard. But the fact that I can say what I just said and it doesn't move you a fucking inch, that bugs me. Probably the same way that me constantly railing about it bugs you. Anyways, back to the content.
Thing I've ever heard. It's just openly straight up race.
Oh yeah, not to mention the fact that, MAGA is currently trying to rip out the Constitution. Besides trying to destroy the Republic, we also have the 14 million dead.
Racist, straight up racist.
It's a very weird framing. Yeah, it's not like, oh, just ignore conservatives. It's like, no. We got to add some extra level to it, extra flavor.
You know, some black people use the N-word as a term of endearment. This is not the opposite of that.
Justin's not going to hang out with us because he doesn't know any of the people. That's okay. Thanks for dropping by, Justin. I appreciate you.
This is really, they're using the hard R here.
Well,
yeah,
it's close. It felt like it, right?
I think he means it as an insult, Sitch.
I think he does.
I don't think it's alleged. I think it is totally intended.
Yes. Now
block and ignore.
The other group he referenced, because I was unfamiliar with them, the ADOS and FBA.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, I know them. Americans, descendants of slaves, right? That's the ADOS.
Okay, look at this.
Conservatism, I appreciate your based and principled approach to birthright, citizenship, and free speech.
Adam, he knows all about
I
the,
know.
black-
I told you I'm a
black group.
genius already. Come on.
What's the other one? The FBA one.
Oh, that one I don't know. I know the ADOS. 1 out of 2 isn't bad, right?
That's not bad. Yes, it's actually a very similar movement. It's Foundational Black Americans, which was popularized by none other than Tariq Nasheed.
Oh, well, that's sad.
Now they both are organizations that they want reparations specifically for Black Americans that were descended from U.S. chattel slavery, and they want to distinguish Black Americans from Black immigrants. So
Yes,
anyone
yeah.
who's Black that is not a descendant of slavery, they want to kind of create a different category for them.
And he's against that. The FD Signifier is, yeah. Probably just because a lot of those ADOS people are conservatives. Those are the people who've told me all my life, I don't want to be called an African American. I'm an American. Like, I've been here my entire life. I was born here. My parents are from America.
Are they? I thought they were in favor of reparations.
The ADOS people are?
Yeah, I thought so.
Maybe some are.
Mm-hmm.
Well, look, I could be conflating the two groups.
I love these guys, but they take a while to make a point. I'm going to fast forward a little bit.
Because
sort of like it breaks down
reduce age
thing.
Right. Yeah.
They're taking the Mahler EFAP approach of taking 11 hours to break down 30 minutes worth of content, which is entertaining. It's fun, but we get it. There's some silly race tribalism within the Black community against Black conservatives, and also Tariq Nasheed popularized the term foundational Black Americans to differentiate the descendants of slaves versus more recent Black immigrants who haven't experienced the same level of systemic discrimination as the descendants of slaves. We got it. Thank you.
Media than we realize, and we control it via the currency of our attention. Do not engage, do not share, do not comment. Even if it keeps popping up, just keep telling them you're not interested. Close the app if you have to, and trust me, you reduce not just how much of this you see, but you reduce its reach altogether. We'll all be better for it. Anyone that needs to be convinced to go outside is probably not someone you want outside, so it's not worth arguing and spreading this rhetoric around. All right?
From a personal perspective, I think that's fine advice. Too many people get sucked into arguments and all this nonsense on social media, and it's just stop it. It's not worth it. Just log off. Okay, you don't need this in your life, right? Just be chill.
Starve the beast. Yeah.
Yes. So I agree with that on a personal perspective. Now, if everyone did that, everyone ignored whoever they were, side they didn't like politically, even though I think you'd be personally.
Do you guys want to? Sorry, is there a point where FD Signifier actually comes into the debate? I thought that they had a debate. Because I would borderline, I wanted a debate. Oh, here we go. Is this it? Yeah, we're going to fast forward. Because I want a conversation that I can react to, not a breakdown of a video that I could break down myself. So let's see if this is the debate.
I never really paid attention to the chat. But this is the first time I've actually sat and watched y'all talk about my video. And so I had a lot of fun with the chat.
What were people saying? I'll come back to my point. What were people saying in the chat while we were talking about your video? I wasn't looking at the chat much, so.
A lot of just kind of they're really excited to see me. It's kind of like a bunch of puppies, everybody's wagging their tail trying to get my attention. Hey, FD, look at me. Here's something racist. Here, I said something racist too, FD. FD, what do you think about Wakanda?
Are they?
I said something about Wakanda.
Based. All right, cool. Now this is what I call content.
Wakanda, wow.
So they're obviously on their worst behavior.
And then one guy spent like a good $100 to get my attention between these super chats. He's got a crown next to his name, Ace.
Ace has talked about you before and said he thinks you're totally racist. So,
man.
Look, Ace is my biggest critic that thinks I go too soft on Trump. He's constantly yelling at me because he hates Trump. So,
yeah, I mean, every chatter group, I've done enough of these in various spaces to know that there's always some unique chatters. And so, like, in my own ADHD moment, I did not focus in on your point, and I was looking to see.
Okay.
Because I had just as I was talking, I was in the process of putting the screen back up so I could see it. But I'm going to go back to
we'll go back to the point.
Yes, I'm sorry. What was
racism against Black people has been a problem in the past in the United States. Some people might argue. Okay, so you agree? You think it's still a problem now?
Mm-hmm.
We probably disagree on the degree to which it's a problem, but don't you think racist stereotypes about Black people are a huge weapon in that fighting racism and perpetuating racism?
I mean, racist stereotypes are a huge problem for like addressing the problems of race. Like the fact that you have to deal with stereotypes is a daily issue for Black people. So yeah.
So they suck. You're saying it's horrible.
Well, stereotypes in general are bad.
Right. Okay. So look, I just, if someone obviously believes these stereotypes and uses these stereotypes against Black people and is not conscious of it, or is doing it worse consciously but nefariously, like they know what they're doing. I mean, I would say that's racist, and I would call that person a racist. But it seems that a lot of people on the left, Black people included, get a pass for doing the exact same thing with white people. They're creating racist stereotypes about white people. Even the white fragility is a racist stereotype.
So
I want to see where that goes. So I'm going to make a prediction real quick, is that FD Signifier is not a dumb guy. Okay. So FD Signifier is probably going to steelman white fragility and the systemic analysis of race and all that kind of stuff. Sitch and Adam aren't going to buy it, and probably neither will I. However, he's going to be able to articulate it better. And then what I'm hoping is that Sitch and Adam, even if they disagree with it, they'll at least acknowledge that they understand the description. That's what I'm hoping for. That's what I'm hoping for out of this conversation. Now, the white fragility thing, the reason why I was laughing so hard at that is because for me, white fragility, right? So the argument is that whenever you criticize white people as a class, despite the fact that white people constantly make Mexican jokes, Central American jokes, Asian jokes, Black jokes, like all that kind of stuff. And whenever like somebody from a minority group gets pissed off, they're like, oh, we're just having fun. We're just doing this. We're just doing that. But whenever somebody makes like a joke or a criticism of white people as a class, they pearl clutch. And that does happen on social media a lot. I think the reason why I don't like white fragility as a concept, though, is because effectively there's this thing, because a lot of people who use it, I'm just going to be real, they're Black folk, right? They're the people who use white fragility as like whenever a white person gets offended, even if they have every right to be offended by some disgusting thing that's said to them, they're like, oh, look at the white fragility, this, that, the other. Whereas oftentimes when it comes to overt racism of white people using the N-word, Black stereotypes, this, that, the other, then oftentimes the response on social media is, if you said that in person, I would beat you up. That is oftentimes the response. And so if we're talking about fragile egos, if we're talking about, spiritual fragility, isn't it kind of fragile to insult someone, then have them insult you back, and then instead of playing within the realm of insults, say, I would beat you up? That seems like a little fragile, right? I'm guilty of this. I'm guilty of being pissed off and saying, if we took this someplace else, then you wouldn't be talking the way that you're saying. But I would view that if somebody said like, your ego was being a little bit fragile there, I wouldn't object. I would think that they were correct. Checking in with chat, because it's been a while since I've checked in with chat, because we've been waiting for Sitch and Adam to actually make a point. No offense to Sitch and Adam or Sitch and Adam fans. Unork says, can you explain the power and privilege of being a of being a U.S. citizen? Absolutely. So as a U.S. citizen, you can travel the entire United States without interruption to your travel. You can go from Florida to California to New York to whatever, and you have an expectation of being free the entire time, and also your constitutional rights being protected by the entirety of the state. Most people in Eurasia cannot leave the territory of their ethno-linguistic group without expectation of having to change the laws. So the EU, as an example, is a recent economic development where the European Union allows you to have like free travel and vacation and all that kind of stuff. But that's something that's only happened in the past 30 years. Prior to that, especially during the Soviet Union era, you couldn't travel into Eastern Europe freely and expect to have some, perpetuation of the laws. You would have to abide by Soviet laws, which are infinitely more draconian than Western European laws. Same thing with Asia. If you travel to China, Japan, Korea, if you travel to Vietnam, Burma, if you travel to India, whatever, there's going to be all these different customs and legal expectations depending on the country that you're in. And so it's kind of like a fish asking, what's it like to swim in water versus fly in the air? And the truth is, it's just different. And then as a follow-up question, you say, I don't see much difference between Hassan and any random person who has had years of lineage in the US. For me, it would be allegiance. I would expect that somebody born and raised in the culture of the United States would be not necessarily, but more likely to be sympathetic to the American perspective of the world. Now, for the sake of content flow, I'm going to get back into it. I will be checking your chats intermittently. Just as a quick shill, like the stream. It's free. Engage in chat. There's lots of cool, interesting, funny people there. Super chats if you got them. Memberships if you got them. And watch the VODs.
I think you're mistaking stereotyping white people. Individuals.
Whiteness. Okay, we're going to go that route. I got you. Okay.
Yes.
Well, we'll talk about blackness. Blackness is basically a criminal mindset. It's a person that can't.
Uh-oh. I think Adam is about to be super fucking racist in order to make a point. I'm excited.
Control their impulses. That's what
this is based on what?
Is. Well, look, I'm starting my new theory right now. Okay. We'll talk to Nick Fuentes later. I'm sure he'll like this theory, and he'll take it up immediately. We'll share it with all the Gorpers, and it'll become all the rage.
Right.
True.
Well, that's still an important
question. Does
academia?
So because it's an academic theory. So hold on a second here.
Well, it's based in empirical research, analysis, history. Like it's based in all these things.
So if we measure the circumference of Black people's skulls, isn't that some sort of
phrenology,
data?
the completely valid science?
But wait, when you say that like whiteness has been empirically proven or something, like what does that mean? Like what is? I mean, what level of whiteness are you talking? Like what aspect of whiteness are you talking about?
So we're talking. Well, so when I talk about whiteness, we are basing this greatly in critical theory areas, right? We're talking about whiteness as a property or disposition. We're not really talking about complexion, because like I don't know, you might call, and I'm getting a little bit out of my bounds here, so feel free to gotcha me at a later date. But like in India, there's
I like how earnest FD Signifier is being. Even if I viciously disagree with him in this conversation, it seems like he's actually listening to what Sitch and Adam are having to say, and he's trying to formulate complex thoughts to articulate. I appreciate that.
Caste systems, right? That still cleave toward whiteness. In Japan, there's been whiteness. In South Korea, so the concept.
Wait, when you say whiteness, do you mean just that there's a caste system, or do you mean that they prefer lighter color skin?
It's sometimes both, but yeah, it's a status and a property. Like to own, what we're talking about is to own whiteness. Like, so you have access to it. So who's the British princess or whatever? She's technically Black.
Oh,
Markle.
I know who you're talking about. The name escapes me. Yes.
Right.
Didn't they abdicate or whatever?
They did something. I don't know this. Yeah. I don't know the deal with
Pocahontas. Is that who you're talking? No.
No. The current.
So
they're talking about Meghan Markle.
She is darn near white passing. Or better, here's one that's pretty much white passing. Rashida Jones. Like most people don't know Rashida Jones is dad is Quincy Jones, the famous black musician.
All right, we're gonna Google some of this stuff. And by the way, I actually do think it's fairly interesting. Can you guys see? You can only see the tab, not the video. So I'm going to change the way that I'm sharing this. Present, share screen, entire screen, audio, share. Got it. Add to stage. Okay. So I actually think this is kind of interesting. This is why I'm not a casual racist. Sometimes casual racism is used as an insult. I'm actually like an advanced racist, okay? And what I mean by that is I like understanding what I view as the racist philosophy of the Groypers and the dissident right and all that kind of stuff and the ethno-nats. I also like understanding the advanced racism of progressivism and whiteness and all that kind of stuff. And so what's interesting to me about what FD Signifier said, I have no idea whether or not it's true in academia, but I know that Japanese folk view themselves as, kind of like the ideal Asian, and they actually look down on other kinds of Asians. Like Asian versus Asian racism is actually fairly common. And so if we look at Asian people, or excuse me, Japanese people specifically, they are kind of culturally, not even culturally, but they're physically oftentimes tall, skinny, lighter skinned, all that kind of stuff. And so as a result, there's, kind of this propensity towards like lightness, tallness, skinniness, right? This is a stereotype, of course. I'm sure there are darker skinned Japanese people. I'm sure there are people, Japanese people are effectively like Asians who escaped into the island versus people who were on the mainland. But if we took this and then we did a Chinese people, and then if we looked at Chinese people, there would be a moderate difference, okay? Where you as an outsider might look at Chinese people and Japanese people and have difficulty, discerning the difference, especially not living amongst Chinese people or Japanese people. But I think that we could see that Xi Jinping is a little bit darker than these folks, and that also even Jackie Chan is a little bit darker than these folks, right? And then if we go into Southeast Asia, like Vietnamese people, then it's going to be a stereotype again, and there's going to be light-skinned and dark-skinned folk, but there are going to be people with a darker complexion. And so there is like inter-Asian racism that doesn't just have to do with features. It also has to do with like darkness of skin and proximity to like India and proximity to like foreign cultures. Like I'm pretty sure Burmese people are also typically darker and have some Indian features, right? And so I think it's interesting because whenever I hear whiteness stated by a progressive academic, oftentimes it's almost solely in the European context. But it's true that not only is there Asian versus Asian racism, but there's whiteness where like Japanese supremacist people actually associate darker and broader features with some level of inferiority. So descriptively interesting, I would say. That whiteness could be just also like Asian racism, not just European racism.
So like she doesn't get the full package, the full status.
Oh, I'm also gonna pull up who did she say? So he said Meghan Markle, but there was also another person.
Yeah.
It's sometimes both, but yeah, it's a status and a property.
Yes.
Right.
Didn't they abdicate or whatever?
They did something. I don't know this. Yeah. I don't know the deal with
Pocahontas. Is that who you're talking? No.
No. The current.
So she is darn near white passing. Or better, here's one that's pretty much white passing. Rashida Jones,
Rashida
like
Jones.
most people don't know Rashida Jones is dad is Quincy Jones, the famous black musician. So like,
okay, Rashida Jones, Parks and Rec. I had no idea. I had no idea that she had a black father. That's interesting. Oh, and then there's Quincy Jones. So Quincy Jones, black musician. Okay. And then also he's talking about Meghan Markle. Meghan Markle might be a little bit darker, but she could just be like a white person with a tan, right? Like she has some darker features, but yeah, she is white passing in a lot of ways. All right.
She doesn't get the full package, the full status, the full analysis of a white woman, but she operates within whiteness pretty significantly.
To be clear, I'm just trying to understand, like, is whiteness just a term that you're saying refers to whatever the dominant caste system in any society is?
That is one example of it. So that's how I would use it in India. Here, but it is intrinsically tied to the people who are of European descent.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Don't you think it's counterproductive to name it whiteness?
Well, what else would we call it?
Lightness.
And the dominant caste group? I don't know, whatever you want to call it.
I don't know.
The rich people, the powerful people, the elites.
I mean, sure. You know, it seems easier to call it whiteness since like all those people you described are like predominantly white. And by not bringing out that concept, you kind of leave the important racial aspect on the, off the table, right? Well, like that's kind of important to name it. Like, so we're not just calling it whiteness, because in India, they don't have other, ethnicities for the most part. I'm sure they have like some that I don't understand, but outside of India, those are just South Asian people. Here in America, the way that hierarchy manifests is explicitly along racial and ethnic lines. So you still call it whiteness because that's what it is. And the thing I've always challenged and I'm curious about, I'm learning. Like I'm here partially because I'm still working on my own grounded theory, much like Adam was a second ago when he was quoting Nick Fuentes.
I think he was quoting himself. I think he was just saying that Nick Fuentes would be friendly to the concept.
And I wasn't actually quoting Nick Fuentes. I was saying,
evoking his spirit.
I would say he would take to these stereotypes about black people pretty readily. I think you agree with that, though, right? You think Nick Fuentes is a racist, right?
Yeah, but let me finish my point.
FD needs to move his camera down so we're not staring at his forehead.
Still also trying to make sense of whiteness as a concept from y'all's perspective. Because why do you think it's not important to like name it whiteness when whiteness is clearly, when the being perceived as white is clearly such an important factor?
It's the same reason that Adam was invoking.
Yeah, exactly.
Like there is we could take a collection of antisocial traits that exist among criminals or, lower income populations in America. And we could say, oh, we're going to call it blackness, right? And then if someone says, well, that sounds racist, I could say, well, listen, I mean, I'm not saying that all black people have these traits, but there's a disproportionate number of black people in that category. So therefore I'm assigning it the name blackness. To me, it doesn't seem like it would be, it seems super racist, and it doesn't seem like it really would be effective at communicating the idea except to people that want to promote racist stereotypes.
I agree with Sitch here. So if you were taking an anthropological analysis, and by the way, I see that LB's in chat, so I know that I'm going to read some things that are going to trigger the shit out of me in a bit. But if you were going to take a analysis of like categorized behavior, like if you said stereotypes about like poor driving, good at math, likes rice, like all that kind of shit, then probably in your head, you're already evoking a racist stereotype of an Asian person. But what if there's like a Hispanic dude that's really good at math and he really likes rice and he's really bad at driving? You know what I'm saying? Like, obviously it's racist as shit because we're taking 3 or 4 behaviors, we're assigning it a racial category that's stereotypical, and then we're assigning it to a category of people. So you can say, oh, well, it's accurate, but then are you going to accept the inverse where we take like, you know, for instance, right now, the Black community has, I forget if it's like 20 or 30, but if you were to isolate the Black community in the United States for homicide, what is it? Black homicide rate US. Homicide rate US. It's not giving me the per 100,000 stat. I know that it's probably greater than 20 per 100,000. I wish it was giving me the actual like per 100,000 rate. But the truth is the United States averages around current homicide rate US. I think we're around like 5 per 100,000. Yeah, so we're at like 6.3 right now. In 2018, we're around 5. We're bouncing between 5 and 7, right? Well, here's a disproportionately Black community, the District of Columbia. They're at 30. So that's 6 times the national average. Louisiana is also a disproportionately Black state, and they're at 16, which is triple the homicide rate of the national average. So the whole point is, like, if I was to anthropologically assign that to working class Black folk, you'd be like, that's racist as fuck. And you know why? Because it is. It is racist as fuck, because 95% of the Black community, 99% of the Black community doesn't even participate in that behavior at all. But there is a sub element of the Black community that's engaged in gang activity, and you can take every anthropological historical analysis that you state, and I'll agree with you, by the way, for why it's happening, and I'll agree. So I would never anthropologically assign homicide to Blackness, although I'm sure Nick Fuentes probably would. I'm gonna let the content flow a little bit more, and then I'll jump into chat.
It would be super effective at promoting racist stereotypes, though, Sitch. Very effective.
At
True.
Like actually making society better.
Right. But so it's a couple of things. One, that already happens. Like, let's be clear.
Of course.
That is not like a hypothetical. That's a real thing.
But academia is not signing off on it.
Well,
yeah,
of course. I mean, academia is not.
That's the biggest difference right there. But academia once did sign off on it. That's why I brought up the phrenology, obviously.
Right.
And so
you wouldn't accept phrenology as not racist just because academia signed off on it, correct?
Why does academia no longer sign off on it, though?
Because it's untrue.
Well, it's not just true, but also academia has become very left-wing oriented anyway.
But what was their, like, what result are they trying to avoid is a point I'm getting at. Like,
racist stereotypes.
It's not, but what do stereotypes produce for everyone except white people?
Not just bigotry, but also bad results.
Like when, if I Adam, all right. So and here's why I have this opinion. If I made a video talking about how racist you guys are, that would be literally the only thing I could ever do to hurt you for the most part. And only because I've amassed a large following.
We're getting into systemic analysis.
Right? If you see me on the street and tell the police I look suspicious, you know what I'm saying? If I
you're making my point about the racist stereotypes. People are more likely to do that on the street because of racist stereotypes. Right.
What I'm trying to say is the stereotypes that you all are afraid of mostly mean nothing.
I hate this line of argumentation. So if you, and by the way, you can see it on social media all the time, because this is where this like thinking is most pronounced, is when you associate whiteness. Let's say that you just want to observe the fact that historically there's been racial caste systems in Europe, in the United States, in Asia that have typically denigrated and stereotyped darker complexioned people and vilified them. I think that's a perfectly fine analysis. I also think that you could probably make an analysis of, well, also when it comes to international beauty standards, because it's been dominated by Europeans, that means that like European beauty standards apply the most. And so we typically think of tall, skinny, thin nose, all that kind of stuff. We think of those things as beautiful, whereas I'm literally going to Google the words African beauty. So whereas, thanks for the boob, this woman, despite having a lot of attractive features, she might not be viewed as beautiful in some contexts compared to white people, because we default to like white beauty standards. I'm perfectly fine accepting that as like stereotypically and culturally true. But what it does is it allows you to castigate all of white people as like supremacist sociopaths who are vampiric monsters preying on the downtrodden of the world. And so that's why, for an example, the BLM kidnapping, we brought this up the other day, in 2017, when a white autistic kid, or 2018, when a white autistic kid was kidnapped and beaten, and basically had racial insults thrown at him for hours while he was being tortured. And that was treated like, whoops, whereas I'm not kidding you, entire city, if that had happened to a black person and it was white people torturing a black person on film for hours at end, there would be entire cities on fire. Even if there was a just criminal justice outcome, there still would have been riots over that. So yeah, so this stereotyping just allows us to dismiss entire classes of people as sociopathic monsters and then do whatever we want to do with them because they're the bad guy based off of their classification. I'm going to engage with chat just because I parasocially love you and I don't want to ignore you. Quick shill time. Like the stream, watch the VODs, super chats if you got it, and also engage in chat. There's lots of funny, interesting people there. Sacred Snow says, as someone who has a very surface level knowledge on birthright citizenship, how does repealing it not open the door to denaturalization? It does. Afro Juice says, Connor, don't fall for the anchor baby rhetoric. Even assuming the worst, you more than most should understand that there's no perfect system. Yeah, no, I think birthright citizenship is better than the alternative. And if there's only 30,000 quote unquote anchor babies per year, that's such a minimally small population. I don't think I actually give a shit. I just wish I could catapult Hassan Piker into the sun. AKA Badasui says, in case you aren't aware, the first hour or more is just reaction to FD. Yeah, so we skipped ahead. Christian Blair says, reviewing the rookie might be algorithmically good. Haven't seen anyone react to it. Yeah. Yep. DD22E says, Connor, can you explain why Adam is brain dead? He's in California and he smokes too much marijuana. What's that? Okay. Can I have a tea refill and can I have water, pretty please, with sugar on top? All right. I love you. Thank you. All right. Reading a few more because, again, I parasocially love you. Bo Dickerson says, I'm pretty sure FD was in their chat during the stream. Yes. And then he jumped in later. Scrolling. One guy time. Don't worry. LB's down there later. So we're definitely going to get one guy this stream. Dominic Gayeta says, some of the black conservative voices are a bit cringe and outdated. True. I find Thomas Sowell in particular, I might have just read it. Sowell is still held up as a luminary, even though he has been thoroughly discredited and debunked by economists and historians. I don't know to what degree he's been debunked, but he does say like some really wild shit and just expects it to be like received as profound. DD22E says, hey, Connor, California is getting its act together. They're finally repealing all the crazy NIMBY laws. Good. Hopefully Ezra Klein is a part of that movement. Sapien Green says, Connor, not saving people is not the same as killing people. I agree. But Sapien, what pisses me off about this line of thinking is that the money that we're saving is so minimal. It's so minimal. it projects soft power that is a complement to hard power that furthers American interest internationally. By cutting PEPFAR, which was $6.5 billion per year, out of the 14 million dead people, I think that PEPFAR is 3 million projected. And that shit is going to save the American citizen $18 per year. If you are going to spend my taxes, number one, I want it on domestic infrastructure and improvement in schools and all that kind of shit. Number two, I want it on the military. Number three, saving 3 million people by spending $18 per year is a perfectly fine use of my tax dollars. You know, if I can pay for lasers that are capable of cutting human beings in half going onto a C-130, awesome, by the way. Awesome that we're arming C-130s with lasers that can cut people in half. If you can spend, I don't know, $100 of my tax revenue per year on cutting people in half with lasers, then you can spend $18 on preventing AIDS. So, Sapien, I agree with you morally. I don't care. Or I agree with you analytically. I don't care. But anyways, for the sake of flow, let's get back into the content. Don't worry, I'll still be reading chats.
You don't fear being seen as a racist the same way I fear whether or not I make a police officer nervous.
Yeah, but
You
that
just said the only way that you could hurt us is to go on your YouTube channel and accuse us of racism.
It's literally the only way.
Which is more likely to happen.
Wait.
Which is more likely to happen?
Shadow 2 Bravo says, I love you too, Connor. I was an infantry sniper, not SF. Come to Idaho and we can have some beer when I win my election next year. Excellent.
Me to get profiled by police officers, or you to get,
or do you for someone on the left to go on their YouTube channel and call us racist? I mean, I bet it's happened to us far more than you've been racially profiled.
And how is that hurt y'all?
Almost not at all. Well, that's not the point. It's still bad behavior.
It's who knows how.
It's definitely, prevented people from the left from engaging in our.
What reparations were in the Emancipation Proclamation? I'm going to check it out.
Probably cost us money, fans, viewership.
Oh man, that sounds tough.
I know. It's very tough.
Well, how many nights have you spent in jail from being racially profiled?
None, thankfully.
So it hasn't affected you at all. It's just fear.
Oh no, no. I haven't been to jail yet.
Okay.
But even me
this has cost us money.
Oh man, is this y'all's job? Do y'all do this day job? Is this y'all full time?
This is like a part-time gig. So
all right. So yes, I'm sorry your part-time gig got thrown off because some lefties, probably with as many or less subscribers than you.
LB, if you have a specific, I just Googled it and the AI summary said that there wasn't a reparations segment of the Emancipation Proclamation. I've heard 40 acres and a mule, but I think that was William Tecumseh Sherman basically promising black folk territory that he ultimately wasn't able to deliver. So if you have a specific reparations statement besides that one, yeah, General Sherman's special order. So this is a general in a war ordering that effectively black folk get a certain amount of territory. But shit, how many acres do we have in the United States? How many acres in the United States? I'm sure it's gonna be a fuckload. 2.26 billion acres. How many black folk in the United States? 41 million. So 41 million times 40 acres. 41 million times 40 is 1,640,000,000. And how many acres was in the United States again? 2.26 billion. Yeah, I don't think we can afford to give you 3/4 of the land mass of the United States. So, sorry. That's probably not going to happen.
Looked at this vaguely racist thumbnail of my friend Sean Spear and said, I don't know about those guys.
But we usually cover people that are like you with larger YouTubes than us.
Who are in fact racist. And I would qualify her as definitely racist. So
I mean, you seem to have a low bar.
But but it seems like your whole argument is essentially, well, it's okay for me or for academia to kind of use something that seems pretty racist just because I don't think that racism against white people will manifest in society in some physical way. So it's okay.
So no. So that's just me pointing out the kind of absurdity of us even talking about this like on an equal playing field.
Well, it's not. And we can go into that, but I'm just saying that to me, that's a weak argument.
Well,
I don't think it's true.
Yeah, that's not my argument though. My argument is not that. So it's funny. I talked with Young about this a couple of weeks ago, or maybe a month ago now. We had a similar conversation. It's not just that it doesn't affect you all, right? It's also that it's kind of an apples and oranges thing, and that's kind of the key issue is that and this is one of the reasons why the concept of racism has been removed from, like, when we talk about, air quotes, anti-white racism, most academics, critical race theorists, and people within sociological, psychological fields would say, we're not really talking about racism, we're talking about bigotry, we're talking about prejudice. And that's because
this is one of the dumbest progressive arguments possible, is trying to differentiate bigotry away from racism. I understand that it comes from the ism part of it. What does the ism suffix mean? The suffix ism is used for nouns typically indicate a distinctive practice, system, belief, ideology, or condition. So I think what happened is racism through the 1990s and thousands meant a system of belief where you held one race to be, superior to another, or you just held that races were different and correlated with stereotypes, right? That's kind of what racism meant through the 90s and the thousands. What sociologists did, though, is they said, well, the system of white supremacy is consciously and subconsciously infused into the character of the United States of America, whereas anti-white racism can be culturally systematized, but it's not a part of like some foundational legal political structure. Therefore, anti-white racism is not, it isn't as prevalent or socially or culturally reinforced as anti-Black, anti-Hispanic, and anti-Asian racism. That's where the sociological analysis comes from. But I actually think it's wildly stupid, because I have met Black folk who were in the hood or whatever, who held wildly prejudicial, wildly bigoted views, not just against white people, but also against Hispanics, also against other Blacks from different cultures. Dude, foundational Black American racism against Caribbean Blacks is fucking crazy. The amount that FBAs, which I'm just using that because it's in chat right now, which is funny. The amount to which FBAs stereotype and hate Caribbean Blacks like Dominicans and Jamaicans, it makes some like Confederate white racism look tame. It's actually crazy.
I'm sure you all chat said with me, for racism to be real, it has to be included with power.
P equals R,
yeah, it has to.
Why? Why does it have to be FD? I don't think I'm going to get a good answer to that question.
So, and there's a reason why that is a thing. It's because historically, when people try to have conversations about race and put, whiteness on the same playing field as everyone else in a country where white people have the majority of power, it ends up not actually producing anything of significant for non-white people. It ends up kind of starting things at a point where, you know, we've already conceded every major issue because it's like, well, we're, you know, it's the colorblind racism conversation, you know?
Right. So, well, two things. Number one, you should actually look into, I don't know if you've looked into sort of the origin of when P plus P equals R, that concept became popular, because it was really popularized in response to conservatives calling affirmative action policies racist. It was really a kind of a, not really like a, oh, this is an important academic thought. It's really more like a propaganda tool, like, oh, well, we don't want people on the right to be able to call all our policies racist, so we're going to redefine the term racism. That's really how that took off.
I mean,
So,
but it's still, it's, so I don't know much about that particular nugget of information, but that sounds like it makes sense. Like that's exactly, first off, I want to be clear, because you said this earlier, and I don't know if y'all caught this. I'm not a fan of identity politics for the most part. I find identity politics, you caught what I was giving out there when I pointed out that Obama essentially exacerbated the flaws of identity politics to a point where it broke people's brains, for lack of a
True.
way of putting it. So I want to first put that out there. But the affirmative action conversation is exactly what I'm talking about. So affirmative action, which never worked for Black people. I'm sure you all know this, right? That the number one beneficiaries of affirmative action were white women.
yeah.
Bill Burr has this like excellent stand-up comedy routine where fucking white women are throwing white men under the bus, where all the exploitation that white men have done throughout history of other, you know, like people and other people of color, and white women like turned around and were like, oh yeah, and you oppressed us too. And it's like, lady, you helped me do the oppression. There's a lot more profanity in the Bill Burr bit, but, you know, white women in particular seems to have, you know, when they were benefiting from the exploitation of people of color and benefiting from the material exploitation of colonialism and historical injustice, they were all about it. But the second they realized that they could also claim oppression from white men, they were like, sick, I'm going to get my bag. LB says, it's true everywhere, Connor. Colorism isn't unique to America, but America, it's about whiteness. Yeah, I was, LB, I think what's going on is I knew colorism was a thing, but I don't use that term a lot. So I kind of forgot that colorism existed as a term independent. And it was surprising to me to hear FD whiteness using whiteness in a Asian context. I've never heard it used that way before, because I think whiteness anthropologically has typically been associated with Europeanism, right? Sen Patty says, my skull indicates that I FBs and get hella money. True. Christian Blair says, Connor is advanced. He introduced me to the slur dictionary. He might even have written it. I don't know. Yep. DD22E says, yes, they do this comes from the idea that China was watered down by barbarian invasions. Yes, like the Manchurians and the Mongolians. Yes. And they think that they hold the mantle of Chinese civilization. Interesting. I knew that, but I didn't fully know that historically. That's interesting, because they were conquered by the Manchu and they were conquered by the Mongolians. And then also they had like the Western Turco-Mongol raids that created the Uyghur. So yeah, I could see how Japanese racist hierarchy would incorporate that. DD22E says, Korea has a similar idea, but instead of Japan thinking they're the true successors to the Tang dynasty, for Japan, Koreans think of themselves as the true successors of the Ming. Interesting. I didn't know that. That's actually really cool. You know, not the racism part, but the historicity of it. Fashion 40 says, white is seen as right no matter where in the world you're at due to colonialism. A lot of Japanese people strive to look European. Interesting. Kiro says, Koreans are the arrogant ones now. K-pop got them feeling themselves. Oh, nice. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Chat's quite passionate about the Asian racism. Just because we're about to hit 100, so I parasocially love each and every one of you. Thank you for coming by and spending part of your day with the stream. Like the stream, it's free. It pushes us in the algorithm, lets other people know we're live. Engage in chat. There's lots of really funny, interesting, cool people in chat. Watch the VODs. That gives me AdSense revenue. If you have a super chat that you want to throw my way, it's appreciated, never required. And if you want to gift memberships or become a member, please do so as well. Thank you.
That the average DEI workshop person looked like Robin DiAngelo, right? So that's number one. That's important to understand, is that affirmative action never worked. However, in concept, the whole point of affirmative action was to recognize that the institutions and systems of power were always going to maintain the status quo as they existed, that Black people had, been pulling themselves up by the bootstraps, et cetera, or the ones that did, and they were getting into positions where they should be getting access to resources, should be getting access to jobs and education, et cetera, and they were being denied that access facing barriers in other ways. And so the whole point of affirmative action was to say, hey, why don't we create a system where these folks who have proved themselves, worthy or whatever, can get access? And the response to that was reverse racism, because they're operating off the idea that the way things are inherently were normal and fair, and that there was no reason to correct them based on past historical prejudices, discrimination, et cetera, et cetera.
I don't think that was the argument. The argument was that, in the 60s, this idea of like, don't judge people by their skin color was basically the prominent idea that was foisted by the left onto, some people who are racist, especially people who are racist on the right. And then they're like, oh, but with affirmative action, you're using skin color as the criteria, so therefore you're being a hypocrite. That was the way people were arguing.
But the point of it was still.
I understand what you're saying. I'm just saying that was their argument. It was.
Hold on for a second. Stay there. What's up? Oh, no, I'm fine. Thank you. Close the door. So it's apples and oranges in terms of like the semantics of the argument. It's still.
Well, I don't think it's semantic. It's people. If people are going to believe something, they want to feel like the rule that there's some sort of even set of rules that everyone's following. They want to believe that there's, different criteria to set. This was part of the argument against treating Black people and other people like second-class citizens, was to say it's unfair that there's different criteria for different people.
But there's not, and we all know this. So yeah, they could have been honest about it and said, look, the racist white systems of this country will never allow Black people to get a fair shot in education, corporate America, whatever. So we're going to purposefully change the frameworks to allow more access to these Black people. They could have said that. Would that have passed? Would that have gotten any type of support from even the left at the time? No, they went with this identity politics based, soft language for a reason, because they knew that was the only way they could get it to get across. And what that does, as I kind of am arguing, is it leaves open these types of arguments. It leaves these arguments open to say, well, this just sounds like discrimination, and isn't discrimination bad? And it's like, yeah, discrimination is bad until I do it.
Yeah, but it's
until it serves a purpose.
It kind of leads into what we were talking about with the.
Wait, is he saying that's good or bad? Because I genuinely can't tell. But anyways, I'm gonna read chat real quick because Joey Saturday, I've been waiting for the race baiters to one guy me. I've been waiting all stream. So there are racists in your chat that hate all white people. Why are not calling them out for their hatred for the whites? Can the people who hate all of white people identify themselves in chat, please? Because I'm actually unaware. I think that LB is the closest to like a progressive independent, and I don't think she hates all white people. She probably just has stereotypes about white people's conduct that can be off-putting to white people. I don't think I have anybody in chat who specifically hates all whites. But if you do, go ahead and identify yourself. They're probably a self-hating white, by the way. It's probably not even a Black person or an Asian person. And what I would say is, I don't care if somebody is bigoted in a funny way. Like if you just believe some random stereotypes about Hispanics and then you're like proven right sometimes in funny ways, I don't care. Same thing for Asians, same things for whites, same things for blacks. I don't care if you have like some subconsciously rooted stereotypes that get validated by reality and then you laugh at it. That's fine. What I care about is if you actually hate people for their exterior experience or sexual orientation or gender presentation before you get to know the person. So as an example, if I see a trans person who's obviously trans, binary, and then I get to know them and, you know, I could be off put, you know, maybe they're gender non-conforming, like, you know, kind of throws me off kilter. But then I get to know them because they're, let's say they're like a waitress or a waiter at a restaurant, right? And then I get to know them and they're a perfectly nice, decent human being with hobbies and ambitions and goals and all that kind of stuff. Then I shouldn't allow me being off-put by their gender presentation to preclude me from having a friendship with that person or being nice to that person in public, right? Same thing with black folk, Hispanic folk, whatever. If I see a stereotypically Mexican guy who looks like he's working the fields, working in construction, whatever, and then I don't hold the door for him when we're both going into the gas station because he's Hispanic and I want to fuck him over because I don't like Hispanic people for whatever reason, I would view that kind of behavior as antisocial, psychotic bullshit, right? So for me, it's not whether or not you're like a little racist in a funny way. It's if you actually allow that racism and bigotry to manifest in truly hateful behavior. That's what I care about infinitely more. Marfin42 says, only in America are white people considered a single group. Yeah, sure. But that's because we're Mediterranean and Northern Europeans who all moved here over the past 200 to 300 years. And the truth is, if we identified by ethnicity, then it would be so complicated that like nobody would be able to get anything done. Because we'd just be talking about whether or not the Germans could work with the Italians, who could work with the Irish, who could work with the Anglos. Like we just don't have time for that shit. We have enough time to be mildly racist. We do not have enough time to be ethnically bigoted. There's just not enough hours in the day.
The whiteness thing and how this would manifest. Because even if I were to argue or to believe, which I don't, I'm just thinking this hypothetically, even if I were to believe that all the anti-white racism in the world would have zero impact whatsoever on, you know, creating some kind of system in America where white people are discriminated against. Even if I were to accept that, it's still.
Bo Dickerson says 21.3 per 100,000. This was back when I was talking about homicides. Yeah, so if that's black folk, then black folk have quadruple the national homicide rate, which fucking sucks. And we should address it in all the ways possible. And regardless of whether or not you're like a race realist who thinks that black people have like some warrior gene or some bullshit, it's pretty clear that good nutrition early in life, early childhood education like daycare, good school systems for people to go through, and access to good jobs is a way to get people on the straight and narrow where they live good lives. Whereas if you make sure that people, working class folk, don't have access to good food when they're young, you make sure that they're not socialized at an early age. And I am talking about like 2 or 3. I'm talking about like very young, getting people into daycare. Not because I think daycare is good. I think that most people are better off being with their family, but they should have the access for daycare for socialization, and then good schools, and then good job opportunities. You are going to reduce homicide, and you are going to reduce violence, and you are going to reduce crime over time if you create a system that gives people that kind of good kickstart to life.
It seems to me fairly obvious that
conservative liberalism says my state has 3.5 per 100K. Yeah, what you live in Maine or Vermont? You live in some New England 95% white place that's cold half of the year.
All of the what we call woke shit and all the identity politics and all the anti-white racism that's been kind of mainstreamed or mainlined in the country for the last 8 years is directly leading to the Groyper movement and sort of this rebound effect by the white nationalist. So it seems it's completely against the self-interest of anti-racists to be promoting this stuff.
I disagree with that. But before I get into that, I just need to understand, are you afraid of anti-white racism?
Yeah, I am. And FD, it's not because I think that systemically it's going to happen anytime soon, but in another generation or two, I don't want anti-white racism to be so culturally accepted that my son goes to school and people just say fucked up anti-white racist shit to him and he's just supposed to take it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm going to raise my kids to fight, basically. So yeah. And then also, when it comes to anti-white racism, I'm just going to show you BLM kidnapping. It might be statistically rare, but it happens. In 2016, 2017, an autistic 18-year-old mentally disabled male was dropped off at McDonald's to go hang out with a friend, and that friend kidnapped him along with a half a dozen other black youths, and they beat him up and said, fuck white people, fuck Trump. They cut off parts of his hair with a fucking pocket knife. They beat the shit out of him. I think they waterboarded his ass. They did all sorts of crazy shit to him. And it was rooted in anti-white racism. So you can say it's statistically rare, but I don't want to live in a world where you see this and then you come up with like some socio-political analysis for why these kids should receive a reduced sentence. No, if you commit a crime like this, it should be viewed as particularly heinous, and the justice system should smack you in the face with the book. So no, I while statistically rare, I do not want anti-white racism to take root culturally, and I don't want it to be used to like excuse particularly horrific crimes. So yeah, FD Signifier. Out of all the things that I'm scared of, sharks, venomous spiders, venomous snakes, alligators, dying in a plane crash, dying in general, skinwalkers. There's like a dozen things, real and unreal, that I am more scared of than anti-white racism. But yes, I don't like anti-white racism and do not want it to become a part of my culture. 100%.
Yes.
You personally are afraid of that. And
no way. This sentence is crazy. Sorry. Sen Patty says, meth is our culture. Tweakers are our belly dancers. Meth pipes are our artifacts.
And it's based on what?
It's based on that. I think there's two outcomes. I think the outcome is we could continue down a pathway where America basically devolves into some sort of weird socialist style identity politics country, which I think would end if.
See, this is why I wanted to stream today. I'm barely paying attention to the video because Sid Patty says, we are a proud people. Give us your copper wire and I will give you a man who can stay awake for 72 hours. Oh, that's awesome.
If we did continue down
socialism
pathway,
shouldn't have much to do with identity politics, but that's, you know,
well, no, the current,
failed.
well, I mean, CRT is rooted in a socialist framework.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. So I shouldn't even.
Sorry. I keep interrupting because chat keeps saying cool things. Once again, proving that CGG is the superior chat compared to all other chats. Everyone in this chat is well endowed. If they're a female in their testicles, if they're men in their testicles, and then they have 3,000 IQ and they're going to be wildly successful at life, effectively becoming a CGGer. It's like Mensa. You know, it just means that you're destined for success. Sacred Snow says, even if FD doesn't believe white racism has personal effects, he should be concerned with the effects on society. Young white men voted Trump because they feel like everyone hates them and it's actively destroying one of the greatest countries in the history of man. Even if it's not true, that narrativization has taken such deep root in FD Signifier, and his line of thinking reinforces it. Saying that academia endorses anti-white stereotypes is horrible. and it will give middle class and working class and rich white folk a victim complex that then allows them to lash out at their fellow citizens. You can say that, well, they already do bad shit anyways, and they already are sociopathic and unsympathetic to the plight of working class and lower class blacks and Hispanics and Asians. You can say that. It'll get much, much, much worse if you play into racial tribalism, 100%.
If Bob getting into that.
Right,
Go ahead.
But you know what I mean when I say
I know what you mean, yes.
Right. I think it's very possible that the country, if it were to continue on that pathway unchecked, I think it would devolve into some sort of weird far left country where it would devolve into a civil war and things would break apart. That's one direction. Or the other direction is it has the pendulum swing back, and the white ethno-nationalists gain a lot more prominence, and here we go again.
So my question was more about you, Sitch. Like, Sitch, when you leave your house tomorrow morning to go do a thing,
Sitch doesn't leave the fucking house. Here's a call out clip. Sometimes a Sitch and Adam viewer, if I talk shit about Adam at all, they'll fucking clip this out. Here's a fucking clip for you. I've been down to Miami 3 or 4 times in the past 5 years. I've invited Sitch in order to get lunch twice. That motherfucker doesn't leave the house. How about that shit? How about them fucking apples? Invite you to a fucking social engagement and you're like, nah, I'm going to hang out in my apartment. Good job, Sitch, you smart ass.
Are you afraid of anti-white racism? Are you afraid of white racial stereotypes? And
right.
Not really, but I'm not too afraid of crime. It's really not too bad where I'm at, but there are areas of town, for instance, it's not as bad as it used to be, but there's an area of town called Eatonville, which is in Central Florida. And it's a historically black neighborhood. It was actually one of the first cities established by black folk for black folk. And when I drive through there, there's some rough parts that, you could get carjacked. You could get solicited for drugs or prostitution. OBT, same thing. There's homicides and drug violence and all that kind of stuff. And it's not so much fear that I think I'm individually going to be attacked, because there are enough white and Hispanic folk that go in and out of those sides of town that it's not like racial tribalism the way it is in different cities. However, there are businesses down there that a lot of people, like I use a tire shop down there because they're cheap and they're good and all that stuff. And, it's not so much fear that it's statistically likely to happen, but I just know because there are sometimes running gunfights on that side of town that somebody could catch around. Now, it's probably not going to be me, and I stay in my car and I stay in the business so I don't catch around, but probably within 2 or 3 blocks from there, on an average day, there's going to be a homicide. So you could catch a stray bullet, hypothetically, in that part of town. So it's not that somebody's going to target me specifically and hit me because I'm white. I could be targeted since I look a little bit better off than some people who frequent that side of town. But yeah, random crime from black folk or Hispanic folk in the rough sides of town. Yeah, it's a mild concern.
I live now. I don't.
All right. There's no place in this country.
That's not true. What do you mean?
There's no place in this country where I can live. Not you.
Mm-hmm.
You might, if you move to some neighborhoods.
FD Signifier could actually just move to the nice upper class side of town, especially if he's rich and has money, and nobody would give 2 shits that he was black.
Maybe lived in once upon a time.
Right.
You could, if you want to be a rapper and you weren't as good looking as, I don't know, what's the guy's name? Jack Harlow, then maybe you might encounter some discrimination at some point if you weren't the right type of white rapper. But there's pretty much no environment where I have your situation. And that is a major key here. Like, we can't speak about anti-white racism in the same breath as actual.
TL1524 says, Connor, I'd be curious to see your take on the Live and Learn crew bullying Wick and his co-host, grilling her and shaming her about voting for Trump without any solutions to bring her back over. Yeah, that sounds like good content. That does sound like good content. Let me lib and learn bully wix / co-host. That sounds like fire to me.
Or racism. If you're talking about, I don't want people to think I'm a Nazi at the grocery store, and I get nervous when I see the police. You know what I'm saying?
Well, yeah. First of all, if I was as white walking around in some non-white areas, yes, I could very easily be discriminated against 100%. And
Yes.
I've heard there's lots of white people who grew up in non-white areas, who went to non-white schools, who were viciously
I will give you
bullied.
that definitely does happen. There's a lot of bullying that happens to white people when they enter all black spaces. There's also other things that happen. It's a weird actual synergy about tokenization, but the results of it are different. But yes, that is true. But that's also like, one, that's pretty rare. Two, there's no impetus. There's no incentive other than wanting to be, again, a white rapper or like a hip hop dance or whatever. There's no incentive for the average white person to pursue being in an all black space, right? Whereas,
yeah, it's actually quite rare for white folk to want to be in an all black space. That's true. Sacred Snow says, what an R-slur take from Adam. If you haven't been personally gone to jail, fear of racial profiling isn't an issue. Sacred Snow, at the risk of steelmanning Adam, I don't think that would be his point. I know I hate Adam, but I feel the need to defend him with this. You can infer that that's his point, but I feel like that's an uncharitable read. I think he and I, maybe because we're racist, I don't know, but there seems to be, I have like a black friend. His name is Alex. Okay. We grew up together. He grew up on the wrong side of the tracks. He would come over to my house during the summers and we would hang out and play video games and go screw around in town and all that jazz. So we had a good time. We're still friends. There were times when he would interact with law enforcement and he would presume that it was unjust and it was just because of his skin color, when the situation was actually pretty intense. And I'm not saying this to be insulting to Alex in case he ever accidentally watches this. However, as an example, they were downtown at a club on the rough side of town, and there was a shooting. And so the victims are actually shot, and they pull up 2 blocks and pull to the right. Well, Alex and his brothers, it might have been brothers plural, but brother, pulls up behind the shooting victims and actually tried to flag down law enforcement in order to get them over to the shooting victims. And so the cops get a call. They're not within eyesight, so they don't see them. They get the call, they show up, and they pull out with guns out and basically detain everyone around the shooting victims. And he thought that was like, specifically because he was black, he was being mistreated by law enforcement. And what I told him is like, no, you're involved in a potential homicide. There are people, there's somebody 10 feet away who might die in the next 5 minutes, and the cops have no idea who the perpetrators and who the victims are. So they're going to search everybody, detain everybody, and then interview everybody so they can find out what happened. And he just presumed, in my opinion, he might deny this, but the way that he was framing the actions of law enforcement was that it was totally unreasonable for them to be detained and for them to be handcuffed and searched. And the only reason why law enforcement did that was because they were black. And no, like, in my opinion, that's like, that's the kind of like victim framing where you wake up and you presume the system just hates you because of your skin color. Whereas if that happened with white folk and I was the law enforcement officer, I'm 100% doing the same shit. If I show up to a scene and there's half a dozen people and they're all screaming and crying and yelling and there's blood on the ground and all this bullshit, then yeah, I'm gonna stop everyone. I'm gonna pat them down for weapons. I'm gonna interview everyone. And if everybody's a little bit jumpy, then they're going into handcuffs until we figure out what's going down. Anyways, that's the steel man. Is just because you're black in America doesn't mean that every law enforcement officer hates you and is going to treat you poorly because you're black. It's just not true.
if I want access,
Sometimes the perceived mistreatment is not actual racial mistreatment. It's just the way that cops do things.
to better amenities, better grocery stores, better this, that, and the third, I need to find the most comfortable white space. That is the best way for me to do that. So again, it's like comparing these two on the same playing field. It just doesn't work.
It's not a question of comparing these things on the same playing field. I think obviously racism against Black people is historically, especially if we include that, is obviously far outweighed racism against white people in America. It's not a question of that. It's a question of if we actually want things to get better in the future, what do you have to do to materialize that future? And to me, it seems very obvious that.
So hold on. Conservative liberalism says, Google how many acres Bill Gates owns. He owns 275,000 acres. That's actually surprisingly small. The Dutton Ranch from the TV show Yellowstone is actually modeled after a real property. Actually, a couple of real properties. There's one in Idaho that's similar to the Dutton Ranch, and there's also one in Texas that's similar to the Dutton Ranch. And it's estimated based off of the shows like canon and lore that the property is 775 or is like 750,000 acres. And so Bill Gates, the actual billionaire who's one of the richest people on the planet, only owns 275,000 acres. He's not as land rich as a fictional TV show character. There's also the private cattle ranch in Texas with its own police force. King Ranch. How many acres is King Ranch? 825,000 acres. So the actual King Ranch, which is a privately owned cattle farm with its own law enforcement, is 800,000 acres. So Bill Gates, I'm calling Bill Gates a wussy.
That's kind of the sort of heavy focus on identity politics and the sort of casting white people as racist. And then when they complain about it, saying, well, you don't get to complain about it because you don't get to experience it the way that Black people do. All to me is doing is it's just going to make it so much harder to have a future where things are better and people aren't actually racist.
So, okay, hey, let's meet halfway here, right? Look at this. This is amazing. I'm getting goosebumps.
Making progress.
Sitch is actually incredibly reasonable and intelligent and capable of understanding argumentation. So I'm happy that FD is surprised by Sitch's intelligence and charity.
Both, I think, agree that identity politics are cooked and that the way identity politics have been weaponized and
C-Dub says, if I give 40 acres and a mule to the Black community, can I get the pass? I mean, I think that's only fair.
utilized, including affirmative action in the 60s, right, are not good and mostly end up being used to put a handful of minority status people in power, become this like, political football to pass around right-wing spaces to show examples of anti-white racism, et cetera, to allow what Barack Obama did to be something that is still championed and greatly supported by liberals and Black liberals alike. So there's a lot of problems with identity politics and the way that people have, like the thing I was about to start a tangent on with you that was a mistake in the moment just because it was derailing the conversation, is that one of the big problems of the left, air quotes left, online, is that it is too identity politics based to the point where people are mistaking actual leftist theory and ideology for minority representation and gender representation, et cetera. And what that really is now a Black president gets to drop bombs on Gaza.
Based.
You know what I'm saying? And so that actually isn't good for the movement I believe in. And so the thing, though, where we end up fighting is that we don't even if you weren't like a socialist, even if you weren't, which clearly you are, otherwise I wouldn't be here and the chat wouldn't be being so nice to me.
Right.
Even if you weren't a hardcore socialist, if you are still of the mind that anti-Black racism and anti-white racism should in any way be discussed on the same playing field, then there's like
they should be discussed on the same playing field because they're both a form of bigotry. If you want to say white racism is worse because it's backed by the power of the state, we can have a conversation about systemic racism. But if we're talking about tribal identities, being bigoted and otherizing people, it's the same thing in that regard.
Haven't gotten past the first step yet, right? Like we can get away from the nonsensical identity politics, the Robin DiAngelo of it all, the DEI workshops, and all this captured capitalist neoliberal nonsense. We can have synergy on that, but we do need to get to the bottom of the ways in which whiteness moves and the ways in which whiteness, like, because the thing that I'm trying to like ground here is that when we talk about white people being racist, I'm not talking about a sense of hatred or animosity towards Black people that is even conscious 90% of the time. I'm talking about how whiteness kind of move. Like when there's a study, I invite you to maybe bring it up one day if you have time, because I know you're a researcher. I wish I could find it. I'm just going to Google it right now because I know I'm sure it'll pop up.
Hey, FD, why is the equality of the playing field as you lay it out? Why is that relevant?
Why is equality of the playing field relevant in terms of like what? Like going back to affirmative action?
Even if I give it to you, if I say, look, the Black stereotypes are 10 times worse. The white people are carrying around a bazooka and you've got a pocket knife. Okay, the stereotypes against the white people don't do as much damage. Why is that relevant? And we're talking about, hey, let's put our weapons away. Like, so maybe we shouldn't.
Well, because I think you all don't even realize you're holding weapons. Does that make sense?
How can you even say that when I'm clearly articulating the problem to you? Sitch is
because he's talking about systems, not just interpersonal bigotry. And oftentimes a lot of the systems that white Americans just presume are benevolent or neutral, Black folks don't view as benevolent or neutral.
Out the problem. You admit that the Black stereotypes are a problem.
Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and steelman this, and I'm actually going to go full screen real quick. And the reason why I'm going full screen is actually kind of sneaky, and I feel bad about it. But don't worry, I still love you, even though I'm about to hurt your feelings. I still love you. Okay. So I view law enforcement neutrally. I actually think law enforcement is absolutely a necessary evil. There are members of the Black community who actually view law enforcement as a net negative because they believe that law enforcement doesn't really serve its purpose of separating criminals from the average working class folk. And so as a result, they're effectively there to harass working class people. They're not, it's not even there for law enforcement or physical security or any of that kind of shit. It's more about like getting ticket quotas against working class people that you're trying to keep financially disempowered. So we disagree on that. And then same thing with like the military. 20% of the United States military is Black and the disproportionately male. So that means that 6% of the United States population serves as 20% of the United States military. And while a lot of members of the military would say, well, this is an important stepping stone in order to get into the middle class because a working class person can join the military, get the GI Bill, get college educated, get, VA-backed loans and all that kind of stuff, and then be in the middle class. A lot of Black folk would say, well, this is just weaponizing the disadvantageous socioeconomics of the Black community in order to impress them into military service so that they can fight the white man's international wars. A lot of Black, like I've heard that verbatim from some Black civilians. And also I heard that from Black military members who said that that's what their family told them. So the whole point of racism from an FD signifier perspective is that that's the way that it's used. Is that we view these white folk like me, view the military and law enforcement as either neutral or benevolent institutions, whereas a lot of Black folks' experience with law enforcement and the military is actually quite negative. So anyways, absolute difference in perspective. I actually do want to watch that more, but I have news that I need to share with you. I am going into a meeting in the next 10 minutes in order to discuss, well, actually, let me wrap that segment up. FD is smarter and more charitable than I thought he would give it credit for. I ideologically disagree with him on a substantive amount of points, but I actually like the fact that he's able to talk about them in an intelligent way with both PF Young and Sitch and Adam. I'm probably going to find more Sitch and Adam content that I can like hate on and criticize or whatever, because I think it's fun. I think Sitch is smart. I think Adam's dumb, but I agree with Adam a healthy chunk of the time. And so it could be fun to find those disagreements that I can spurg out on. End of segment. Have a great day. Go enjoy your other favorite streamers. Bye.